Well, we've got a busy weekend underway with a ton of things to talk about. Front and center right now is a system in the east that's going to become a major storm, and we have winter weather advisories, winter storm warnings, flash flood warnings, severe weather, and also high wind watches that are up because we're going to howl here Sunday night into Monday. Meanwhile, we have weather going on around the rest of the country, and also, is there going to be another big storm later this week? We are going to look at the very latest models as they come out. So, fasten your seatbelts, folks. It's the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which you can support very easily. And it keeps the show, by the way, mostly commercial free, which is a big plus. If you do your Amazon shopping using our referral link at the top of the chat board or on the descriptor to this podcast, it's very simple. Just go in there, use the link, search, shop, buy, and Amazon throws us back a little bit of coin for sending you there. It doesn't cost you 1 cent. The only effort you make is to click on that link. So we appreciate those of you who have done so and encourage others to do it. And thank you for supporting the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. All right, so we've got a ton of stuff to talk about, so I think we should kind of keep it in a orderly sense. We've got the new, as far as the next weather system is concerned, we're going to get to that because by the time we get through this first one, we'll have most of the GFS in. We've got the new icon in, and we can deal with that. But in the meantime today, the radar this morning, Joe, looks a lot like it did last week where you had, snow approaching and there was this convective stuff that was in Ohio and in southern Pennsylvania. If that holds together, there could be, a few hours with a decent amount of snow in terms of intensity. It puts down a couple of inches, some places a little more, some places a little less. And then we go over to sleet and freezing rain and rain for the overnight. And then we set up for, I think probably the worst of all of this is going to be the wind Sunday night into Monday.
Yeah, it's been a while since I could. I'm racking my brains for the last few hours trying to remember when was the last time that the National Weather Service issued a high wind watch. Now, when they're talking about high winds, I mean we've had wind advisories, and that's for winds gusting to over 40 miles an hour. But when they talk about high winds, they're talking about winds of 55 and 60 miles an hour. Those kind of winds mean business, and indeed, we are looking for the potential as this storm pulls away late tomorrow and tomorrow night, getting backlashed by a very strong, the gradient tightens up really quick, and we get into that northerly or northwesterly airflow of very strong winds. And I agree with you, Joe. Everything is coming at us from all different directions. We've got the snow, we've got the sleet, the ice, the potential for rain. There may even be a thunderstorm thrown in for good measure. And then after all of this comes the wind, which leads us into the early part of it. This is not just something that's going to, when the winds rev up, it's not going to be one of those cases where, let's say, Sunday night into early Monday, the winds are very, very strong and then they diminish. These winds are going to stay with us, and they're going to be quite active through much of the day Monday and maybe even a part of Tuesday as well. So those winds are going to be roaring in a winter where the winds have been roaring all through the course of this winter. We've had seemingly nothing but windy days. Here we go again, and this may be the cherry on top of the Sunday. This may be the windiest of all of those days coming up.
No, I totally agree with you. This thing gets down to a 9, into the 960s when it gets up into the Gulf of Maine. It's funny because the models they were showing a strong system, but they really weren't going crazy with the overall depth. Suddenly since we were last on Thursday, it started to become pretty clear that this lead storm system was going to be a major storm when it was all said and done. And of course, this storm has a big impact on what happens to the next one. Models are keying on for later this week. So before we talk about that, let's do the first one here. Joe's going to set up the radar so we can take a look at what's going on at roughly 11:05 a.m. Eastern Time. And I'm going to kick it off with the plethora. I like the word plethora, Joe. It's a 7.99. That's a 7.99 word, seven
Yeah.
dollars and 99 cent word that I'm using, and it's like a Christmas tree. Winter storm warnings for much of northern New York, north of I-90, all of Vermont, all of New Hampshire, and all of Maine except the southeastern counties, which they have a winter storm watch up. I'm not sure, what the specific issues are for that part of the coast. Maybe there's some rain involved, but that's that. Winter weather advisories covering Massachusetts, uh, uh, Connecticut, Rhode Island, the northwestern counties of New Jersey, just about all of Pennsylvania except the southeast. You can see, by the way, in the coloring that high wind watch is not just for the coast, but it goes all the way down into Maryland and Delaware, and actually goes well north and west of the coast as well. We've have winter weather advisories also up in Western Virginia into the northeast, northwestern mountains of North Carolina, and wind advisories extend southward into northern Georgia. Flash flood watches in West Virginia, Kentucky, southern Ohio, southern Indiana, and southern Illinois. Much of Tennessee, northern parts of Mississippi, back into Arkansas, and late today and tonight, we're going to see an outbreak of severe weather across the Gulf states, and we'll get to SPC in a moment. Advisories up also around the Great Lakes with some winter storm warning pockets in northern Michigan on the lower peninsula and on the upper peninsula. Advisories across central and southern Wisconsin, southwestward into Nebraska. New, I think these are winter storm watch. The colors always throw me off. No, I'm sorry. That's an extreme cold watch that they have up in Minnesota and back through North Dakota into Montana. An extreme cold watch. Various scatterings of winter storm warnings and winter weather advisories from the central Rockies on up to the Pacific Northwest. And you can see on the satellite that this storm system means business because we are loaded with clouds, and it's actually coming out in two pieces. The lead piece is what's moving through the Mid Atlantic and Northeast for today, and that's going to be the snow producer part. And then, as the second and more important area comes out from the southwest, that is going to be the developing low that runs up the west side of the Appalachians. It goes up through western and northern New York and eventually finds its way up into northern New England by the time we get to Sunday night and Monday. Just want to mention here, we've got super chat hits this today from, thank you for hitting the tip jar. Bilbo Swaggins, hits the tip jar, as well as David Fuller and Chris N. Thank you all for hitting the super chat tip jar. Mr. Rayo has the radars lined up so we can take a look at what's going on right now and then put some context as far as what's going to be going on later today.
Okay, well, we are going to start off with right here in the immediate area, the Upton radar, which for the moment doesn't show very much. They do show some cells of precipitation across northern sections of New Jersey. They also show well up to the north, up toward just south of Albany, over toward the Kingston area. Not sure if any of this is reaching the ground yet, but generally speaking, we're thinking, or at least I'm thinking, that the first flakes will begin to make their appearance around the immediate tri-state area after about 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon. And as you can see, the precipitation moving on a almost straight west to east trek or trajectory. And in fact, if we go further to the south and east over into, let's say, the Philadelphia area or Wrightstown, New Jersey, you see more of the activity coming in. Now, this area of darker blue over Amish country, over southeastern Pennsylvania, over toward Lancaster, for example, that almost certainly in Harrisburg, that almost certainly is reaching the ground. And so the snows are there, and they're beginning to show up also over portions of eastern Pennsylvania. And again, this is the area that will be moving into the tri-state area. Let's see, we're 10 after 11 o'clock right now. So give it another couple to 3 hours, and you will be seeing snow here in the immediate New York City metropolitan area as well. If we go back further to the west, let's go over toward, let's say, Binghamton. You can see more activity over into central sections of New York and also into northern sections of Pennsylvania. You even see some flashes of green, which means light to perhaps moderate activity blowing up. So again, all of this is moving at a good clip from west to east and will be enveloping much of the tri-state area, most of eastern New York, all of northern New Jersey, and western Connecticut within the next 2 or 3 hours. If we move down, let's say toward Washington, D.C., Sterling, Virginia, we see that the area of precipitation is moving through the nation's capital right now. We even see flashes of yellow there, so that indicates maybe perhaps moderate to even heavy precipitation falling in and around Washington and moving toward Baltimore. And that, again, as Joe mentioned, we may see the precipitation pick up in intensity here locally toward the end of the afternoon. And just like we saw last week, where there was a short interval where snow was coming down at the rate of an inch or maybe even 2 inches per hour. Not saying that's going to happen again, but we may be approaching that kind of situation. The difference between last weekend and this weekend, however, is that the upper atmosphere, especially above, let's say, 10 and 12,000 feet, is going to warm very rapidly. And so as a result, we'll start off as snow, but it's looking more and more, Joe, like we're going to be changing over to sleet and ice. Maybe in some cases as early as 7 or 8 o'clock in a few spots from the city on west. And we may go into a prolonged spell of sleet and ice for several hours before we then change over to just plain rain. And that may not happen until around or soon after midnight tonight. As I mentioned back on Thursday, whatever falls this afternoon and tonight, and especially tomorrow, whatever happens, you want to get rid of it as quickly and as expeditiously as possible, because if you decide, well, I'll wait until Monday to get rid of it, President's Day, you're going to have a lot of problems because, number one, it's going to turn sharply colder. So whatever's on the ground tomorrow, however mushy and slushy it is going to freeze up solid by the time we get to Monday. And on top of everything else, if you wait until Monday, you're going to be battling those fierce winds of 30, 40, 50 miles plus per hour. That's the last thing you want to do, is to be out in that kind of situation trying to clear away lingering slush, ice, and snow. So stay on top of this tonight, tomorrow. Clear away as much of it as you possibly can, because then we go into a protracted spell of cold weather here for Monday and Tuesday and even Wednesday of this upcoming week.
Can you go across Kentucky and Tennessee? Because we've got a lot of heavy rain there too.
Yes, sir. We will do that. We will go to here
By,
is
and by the way, I just was kind of looking at the observations from that area that was coming out in Pennsylvania. Actually, not too shabby. Moderate at Bradford, almost moderate at Du Bois. At Johnstown, we've got moderate snow there. Heavy snow at Altoona, 1/4 mile visibility. Now that's in the western half of Pennsylvania. Somerset also borderline, borderline moderate snow there. Again, that's that convective area that came out of Ohio, just like last week, and I'll really be interested to see if that holds together and we wind up with a repeat performance in terms of the moderate to heavy snow that broke out ahead of last week's snow changing to rain scenario. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead with the next radar.
well, you. This is Jackson, Kentucky, and as Joe mentioned, there is rather heavy activity going on right now in the Jackson area, moving into western sections of Virginia and also into West Virginia. All of this yellow is moderate to heavy activity, and so that too is moving on a clip almost straight west to east. Let's see where else we can go here. We can go to here's Evansville, Indiana, and you can see here that in Evansville They're showing activity across western sections of Kentucky, heavy activity, and it appears that ironically, for Evansville, Indiana, now there's only the southern edge of Indiana is getting hit. Most of Indiana on into adjacent Iowa, adjacent Ohio. That activity again moving basically across Kentucky. I'm trying to see if I could find Louisville here. Let me see Louisville. No, that's Jackson again. I'm sorry. Um, bu- 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 Come on, where are you? Everything on the map that I'm using, it's so very small. Here's Campbell, Kentucky. Campbell and Trenton. I always thought Trenton was only in New Jersey, but apparently there's a Trenton in Kentucky as well.
There's
But
one in
yes,
ten. There's also one in Tennessee. So
so yeah, so there you go. You've got all of this activity, this heavy activity, moving across Kentucky and moving again on a rapid west to east pace. And again, where you see the yellows and the oranges, that's probably moderate to heavy rain at this particular moment in time. Joe, there are some parts of down here in the Tennessee River Valley. I saw one piece of guidance yesterday that was actually suggesting that parts of this region could pick up between now and the end of the day, tomorrow or early Monday, 6 to 9 inches of rain. 6 to 9 inches. Unbelievable.
yeah. Well, I can believe it because I got that the other night. I got close
Yeah.
to 8 inches back on Thursday, I think it was. I mean, it was crazy. Yes, I mean, all of this, of course, as loaded as the radar is. Uh, it 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 begs to the fact that we have this sort of two. Okay, I'm kind of jumping ahead here. Just wanted to bring that up. Okay, so this first area here is playing through today and this evening, and then you see there's precip that's starting to form back further to the west, and that's going to be with the developing low that comes through for Sunday during the day. We also do have some snow going on up across the Great Lakes and the northern Great Lakes and back into Wisconsin, and we've got a little bit of moisture coming in with some precip into the Pacific Northwest. Storm Prediction Center has an enhanced risk of severe weather today in a pretty large area in the central Gulf states, from western Alabama to western Louisiana and southeastern Arkansas down to the Gulf Coast. The marginal risk noses up into Georgia and Tennessee. And that comes with a 10% tornado risk. And also, in that hatched area, excuse me, the probability of a tornado within 25 miles of any point in that hatched area is a 10% or greater probability of EF2 to EF5 tornadoes within 25 miles of any point. And that severe weather risk tomorrow is a marginal risk that extends from southernmost New Jersey down to northern Florida. The general thunderstorm risk has been pushed up to the Massachusetts state line. And as Joe mentioned earlier, don't be surprised if we wind up seeing a thunderstorm or two when that front goes by sometime tomorrow afternoon. Two areas of tornado risk: southern Delmarva to North Carolina, southern Georgia down to North Florida. Both areas a 2% tornado risk. And as Joe pointed out, big rains of 5 to 7 inches by WPC's forecast. Well, now again, most of this is the rain, but some of this is with the next weather system. And we've also, this takes us, by the way, to next Saturday morning. So what you see in the east includes today's and the next one. And we're talking about 2 to 2.5 to 3 inches of liquid that's being shown for southeastern New England down into Virginia. Another area of heavy precip across from Georgia down to Louisiana. Some heavy snows with the precip amounts of up to 2 inches in the northern Rockies. And we've got heavy precip in the Pacific Northwest. Arthur Gillis, thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight. I only forecast shop at Joe and Joe's. Yes, exactly. Where everything is available and always on sale. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
that and the good
yeah,
laugh.
yeah. I just want to back up in terms of the convection. If you remember back on Thursday, Joe, for Sunday, they had a lot of the convection south of the tri-state area. They did not have New York, for example, in the zone of even general thunderstorm coverage. Then yesterday, I noticed that the general thunderstorm coverage had made it just about up to New York and across parts of Long Island. I was still outside of that. Now, today, the Storm Prediction Center has, as you mentioned, the general thunderstorm activity now all the way up to the southern sections of Vermont. And we are now fully in it. But now, on top of that, they have marginal risk along the coastal plain, and even a 2% possibility or probability of tornadic activity for places like the Delmarva area. So, with each passing day, SPC has been bumping the chances of thunderstorm activity up. Back on Thursday, I would have said, yeah, you might see a rumble or two of thunder. Now, it's looking more and more, especially as you've mentioned with that frontal passage, that cold front is going to rip on through here, probably like 1, 2, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. That is the catalyst for potential convective activity. And if we're going to get any thunderstorms tomorrow in the New York area, it's probably going to come with that. And as soon as that thing gets off the coast, and as soon as it goes east of our area, watch the winds. Watch how the winds rev up tomorrow behind that frontal passage and sets the stage for, again, those high winds for tomorrow night and on into Monday and even perhaps into Tuesday before they finally begin to wind on down.
All right, here's the European from overnight, and you see the snow breaking out ahead of it, and then of course you also see the developing low in western Tennessee, western Kentucky, and the squall line of severe weather that runs down from there to southwest Louisiana during the overnight. We're going to see that moisture, the warm front,
We hit 100 already,
Northern
Joe. I have a
Lights.
feeling this is going to be a 200 day today.
Oh,
I'm going to get the
okay,
horn ready.
works for me. Um, The warm front, a lot of times with these systems, the warm fronts struggle a bit, especially when they get into New England. Going into areas where there's deeper snow cover, cold air tries to hold on longer. But this is this system is intensifying fairly rapidly as it heads into the Ohio and up into western New York. So that warm front's going to want to push further to the north. So that might help the icing situation, lessening it in areas in southern New England and in the lower Hudson Valley overall. Now, by tomorrow, we've got the low in western New York, somewhere near Buffalo or just south of Buffalo. The cold front's going to come through, and you can see the European shows, what looks like the convective nature of the precip with these heavier areas of rainfall that are being indicated. And that front trails all the way down to Florida. And the other thing is, I mean, look at the gradient is just absolutely super tight here with a 976 low up near Glens Falls by the time we get to Sunday evening. And then that low jumps to the coast of Maine. It's probably why they have that part of coastal Maine under a winter storm watch rather than a full blown warning because they may have some sleet, freezing rain, and rain issues there. But nonetheless, the gradient's going to be super tight starting late Sunday afternoon into Monday afternoon. I wouldn't be shocked to see frequent gusts to 50 to 60 miles an hour. Now, all of this is part of the setup for the next weather system. And I want to take a look at the upper air because I think this is really important. And, I also have to give a big heads up, congratulations, and thank you to Dave Tolerus, who, pretty much laid out almost perfectly how this is going to evolve. I don't, at this point, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. But in terms of how was supposed to play out, I mean, it is playing out to absolute perfection. And we had him on well over a week ago, so this was even before much of last week played out. So, we were talking a serious, look into the long range out 10 days or more. But he mentioned this whole KU, Cosin, Uccellini phenomena that those gentlemen have talked about in the Northeast Snowstorm Bible, which everybody should have. His
Cosin and
routine watch.
Mussolini.
That's correct. So we had back on Friday, we had this first system that went up to our west late this week, and that's gone. And he talked about the fact that there would be two systems to bring this trough in the west and shift it to the east, and that's what we're seeing now. The second system, you see the deep trough from Lake Winnipeg down to Mississippi and Alabama, lifting up in that massive negatively tilt northwest southeast orientation, and no wonder you wind up with a 960-ish low in New England. Now, that low winds up translating east, and you'll notice that the western end of the western part of that darker blue that develops in northern Minnesota, there's another upper low there, and we're from this we see an arm that forms yet into another upper low, and that's when we get to Wednesday. And the European has this one solid upper low feature that moves southeast into the Ohio Valley and then translates eastward, tracking the upper low center actually tracks across northern Maryland. This is going to be important in terms of how this plays out because usually you go 50 to 125 miles north of or northwest of where the upper low tracks. That's where you're going to wind up with your heaviest snow. So it tracks an upper low across Maryland, Delaware, and then right off the New Jersey coast and just east of Long Island, south of Cape Cod, and goes out to the east. I mean, this is a very dynamic upper air setup that we have. Now, I'm going to switch because I want to do a little bit of comparison here. This is a slightly different look of the same thing where you can actually see the jet streaks that are involved. And this is again, the same European. And you can actually, you see the rotation that forms over the Dakotas, closes off, strengthens, and then moves to the east. And look at that swirl, that nice curl there that you get when it's off the coast. And that probably signifies that the surface low is going to have some sort of a comma head for the one for later this week. Now, we've got the new icon model, okay, which kind of wavered a bit last night between the GFS and the European in terms of the outcomes. But today's the icon is very much in the same place as the European is in terms of the upper air feature. So it puts one another supporting model into the Europeans' idea. Then we have the Canadian model, and this is the new one. So I haven't looked. I've seen the old one. I haven't seen the new one, and the new
Last
one.
night, the Canadian model was giving something like 24 inches of snow.
Okay,
That was
um,
last night, though.
right. Well, this 500 on the new Canadian model is the same as the European, the same as the Icon. So you've got three. Now I'll show you what the GFS is doing, and this is the new GFS, which is now something more in line to the European. The problem is, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the 0Z run of the European last night. And the last few days, the GFS has had really a difficult time handling the development of the upper air feature back through the Dakotas. And for whatever reason, the model kind of decided that it wanted to split that low. You notice right here, it splits it. One piece gets left behind back in North Dakota and eastern Montana. Another one kind of dives southward, but it doesn't really look all that impressive here, and it would sort of shove everything out to the south and east.
It's
Well,
sort of an open wave. It's sort of it's like an open wave trough. There's
right,
nothing. Whereas the European model, for example, is taking an open wave but closing it off as it approaches the coast. And of course, by closing it off, it slows everything down, intensifies the storm system. Meanwhile, the GFS is not closing it off. It just leaving it as an open wave and rippling it through and out. So
right.
therein is the difference.
And now on the new GFS, even though it still shows this sort of split, it does now close off an upper low in a slightly different way, but it has it in Ohio and Pennsylvania and then carries it through. So it's still not quite where the other three models are, but it's very close. Uh,
Coming around.
it's coming around. So and as was pointed out to me by Bill Goodman, who might be trolling the chat board today. I don't know. He said he might.
Bill
Um,
Goodman, I got a big laugh. If Bill is watching, Bill, I got to tell you, I let out the biggest laugh yesterday when I read on your Facebook page. Bill had a picture, Joe, of a snow goose,
oh, did
and
he?
he's talking, and we went into the discussion about how it was looking better and better for the potential for a big storm next week. And he's making the reference to the snow geese is beginning to honk, and I got to laugh at that.
That
I
was
really.
yeah. That is funny. Here's the new GFS. Well, just for context, let me just go back. Let's go back to the zero Z run of the GFS, and you see how it's got this much further south, blows off the southeast coast, but then it just sort of takes it out to the northeast from there, and you hardly get anything at all from it. The 6Z came a little more northwest. Now we've got the 12Z, which is even more northwest. And actually, if you look at how it's structured the surface, it's got two surface lows. It's got the southern low that's out to the east, but it also forms a low under where the upper low is going to be. And that's why you have now all this dark blue snow across New Jersey and Long Island. That would signify heavy snow. And then it slides out to the east. So but the takeaway for me, Joe, is that the European, and this is what Bill said, made a very good point. In situations like this, where you've got the Europeans showing this big development at the point that we are in the range of the cycle, we're inside 7 days, that the European tends to be right about these things far more than the GFS does. And I think that's a very valid point. Here's the icon, which the European and the icon sometimes, follow themselves. They're kind of in lockstep. The icon, you see snow breaking out Tuesday in Kansas and Missouri, moving into Kentucky, into northern Tennessee, West Virginia, southern Ohio, and Indiana. The icon's got a surface low that crosses the Florida Panhandle to near Savannah, and then kind of scales it up just right off the immediate coast of the Carolinas. And then as that upper low gets it, it just blows up. It's got a 970. What is that? 979 or 978 low, sitting at roughly 38 and a half and 73. I mean, it goes right to the 40 and 70 benchmark, and then and goes away. Look, I know some of you are like, okay, are you going to put out amounts and all the rest of it? Uh, Here's the bottom line with something like this: if it plays out the way the models are showing, because you have to, you generally have to thread a very fine needle with these sorts of things. I mean, certainly it's not there's nothing controversial here to say that these are the kind of storms where you wind up with a foot plus for just about everybody. I mean, this would be a Washington to New York to Boston, that sort of godlike mythical I-95 type snowstorm. I don't think there's anything controversial about that. I don't think it's a reach to say that this could be a 1 foot plus snowstorm for everybody. But I think we need to wait till Monday to just really kind of sink it all in. And as far as how this is going to play out and where exactly it's going to play out. But I don't, Joe, are you on the same idea? I mean, you kind of thinking along the
Yeah,
same
if you're
lines here?
asking, if I've seen more than a few people out there saying, "All right, we're close enough now. Well, how much are we going to get?" And no, we're really still not close enough because there are little fine. There are things here that can change very subtly over the course of the next day or two. It could very well be, for example, that we might be looking at a massive snowfall for, let's say, much of New Jersey up to about New York. And then there could be a sharp cutoff, and you may find that places up in the Hudson Valley where I am will get snow, but maybe not the tremendous snows. Like case in point, the famous snowstorm in 2016, which had the biggest amount of snow ever for New York, 27 and a half inches. And you say to yourself, my God, what did the folks north of the city get? I got 11 inches out of that. I got a full 15 inches less than New York City. And places just a few miles north of me had barely enough to cover the grass. So we knew that it was going to be a major snowfall. We knew in that case in 2016, but we really didn't know until almost the last minute just how much who was going to get. So what I'm saying is, it's looking good. It's looking better for a significant snowfall, maybe the biggest snowfall we've seen around here for the past 3 or 4 years. Yes, but still, we need a couple of more days to fine tune things and to get a better handle as to exactly who's going to get what in terms of a substantial or significant snowfall. And the fact that the GFS is, as I mentioned a few moments ago, coming around with all the others. The GFS up until now has been the outlier. It's been trying to push the storm to the south and not really give very much. But we'll see. We'll see how the next 2 days, because you want to have, people say, Joe, they say, oh, the GFS isn't worth anything, and you don't even want to look at it. You can't play it that way. You want to get all of the models, all the short-term guidance models on the same page or close to the same page to give you a good confidence, a good sense of what is going to happen. Right now, again, I would say that it's looking good for a significant snowfall here Thursday of this upcoming week. How much? Still, but this looks like it could very well be not just the biggest of the year, but also maybe the biggest we've had in a few years. We'll see as we progress closer to the event.
All right, so I'm feeling a little bit generous. So I think we could kind of look. Well, let's look at. I these are 24 hours. This is excuse me. This is a 24-hour view snowfall forecast map. The new, well, it was. Let me fix it. Let me fix it. Uh, Let me get back to the right spot. Thing I hate about the pivotal. Well, I shouldn't say hate, but just if I don't hold the mouse
Annoyance.
correctly, it jumps
An-
around. So
Annoying.
yeah. So look, I kind of centered it. I can't get it exact, but let's forget the specific numbers for a moment. But if we looked at today's GFS run, you what Joe described would be the outcome, which is uh, go north in the Hudson Valley. You get up north of Route 84, you don't get very much. You get down to the coast, you start, you're looking at 8, 9, 10 inches. And then if you go to southern New Jersey, down into Delaware, back to south of Washington, D.C., over toward Richmond, you wind up with a foot plus. Okay. That's today's, from off today's run. We can look at the icon well, let's go to the European first. So this is the 6Z European. And again, just because I have to subtract out some of the snow that it has for today, but rather than do that, we'll just look at it this way. So the European from 6Z had, basically the northern area further north going up to like maybe the 6-inch line is just south of Albany, or maybe a little bit more than just south. But you get, you know, sizable amounts, 8, 9, 10 inches in the Hudson Valley, and then you see in that reddish area would probably be where you'd get your foot plus, which would be a growing area, maybe southern New Jersey, coastal New Jersey to Long Island, and over into Connecticut. So there you go. That's the old European 6Z. The 0Z was much more, but had more because the 6Z kind of nudged the surface low wrapped up, but it had it a little further to the east. And then we have the icon today. And I just wanted just to emphasize, these are general, the model's taking the amount of liquid precip it's producing and putting up, turning it into 10 to 10 to 1 ratio snowfall. So there's nothing really magical here. It's just doing a literal interpretation of what it's producing. But you can see where the big snows are on the icon today, and they're big. I mean, the icon would say, 1 to 2 feet across much of New Jersey to Long Island, and 1 foot plus snows going well up north into the Hudson Valley, and even 8, 9, or 10 inches as far north as Albany and into western Massachusetts, and also big snows down, Washington D.C., Baltimore. You get the note. You get the idea here. So
We're
look,
probably not going to get. We're not probably going to get a really good tweak or adjustment on these snow amounts until probably the 12Z run on Monday at the earliest, or the 0Z run to Monday night, Tuesday morning. Then I think we'll be within range of being able to say with some
Yeah.
amount of certainty or surety that, all right, they're going to get this and we're going to get that. And until then, until we can get more of that, more data into the base, because again, what you're looking at right now, using the algorithms of these various models, in a way, they're just guessing beyond, let's say, 3 or 4 days as to, what could happen, what might happen, where we might get the significant snowfall. Again, they're all kind of like circling the wagon and saying, all right, it looks like a big one, but we're not really confident. Wait, can you wait a couple of more days? You've waited 3 years for a major big snowfall. Can you wait another 2 or 3 more days before we finally have a good answer on all of this? Because that's what it looks like right now.
Just want to touch on a couple of things. This is in terms of the structure of all this, because Gary Gardner just jarred this for me about uh, whether mixing or rain gets involved and so on. If you're dealing with a really, and I just want you to notice here, and I'll go up real close because this is far different. If you look at what for just as a comparison, look at today, okay, where you sort of you have all this warm advection coming up ahead of this storm system. You get this area of snow, southerly isobars, warm air comes in off the ocean, precip changes over to rain. I mean, there's nothing really magical about that because that's how the atmosphere works. It's different. It's a little different when you're dealing with if we wind up dealing with a cyclone that's as intense as this, where you get a 978 low or 972. Again, using the icon, because what happens is because of the very, very cold, intense feature of the upper air aloft, the cyclone, the precip profile becomes tilted, and the cold air winds up penetrating into where the surface low is. So you don't get, you could say, oh my God, look how close. We've seen rainstorms with lows that have been this close to the coast. But this is different because you have a wrapped up cyclone and everything gets just drawn into where the circulation center is. So there's no rain or mixing here that's going on near the coast. It just doesn't, it just won't happen. Now if you take that surface low and run it up Delaware Bay and move it up into western New Jersey, that's a whole different ball game. Okay, but in a situation like this where you're dealing with just like a totally circular wrapped up system, uh, you don't get mixing with you don't have the threat of mixing issues for the coastline. So this to me is it's snow or nothing. I mean, bottom line is it's snow or nothing. It either is going to track the way the models have it, or if it winds up tracking to the south and east and offshore, that you just get, brushed on the northern end. This is not a snow changing to ice or rain situation for anybody.
This is what the old time forecasters, I say old time. I mean, we worked with a lot of
Yeah,
these
because
guys.
we're old time now, Joe. You got to remember that.
Yeah, but when we were young bucks, and we used to work with the old timers like Tom Morgan and Tom Grant and Gunther Reese,
Oh God, yes.
Abe Zwicker. I mean, they would refer to a storm that stays all snow straight on through from start to finish as a quote well-behaved storm, one that does not, include the risk of maybe a changeover to sleet or ice or freezing rain or even plain rain, which makes forecasting and accumulation difficult. When it's snow from start to finish, that takes away a lot of the aggravation in trying to predict as to how much is going to fall in any one given storm. So this is looking more and more on Thursday like one of those well-behaved storms where we don't have to worry about the possible mixing, as opposed to what we're looking at right now for tonight, where the question is when is it going to go from snow to ice to rain or whatever, and all this sort of stuff. I'm not actually, I'm not really concerned about accumulation so much with tonight. I do feel a little surge of excitement though tomorrow, because when that cold front comes through around midday, it's going to be interesting to see A, if we're going to get a thunderstorm, B, how much rain can fall for short interval of time, and then C, just how rapid those winds start to increase and pick up behind the actual frontal passage. You'll know when that front passes by, when it does actually pass on by. You'll know because it's going to come through here like a Mack truck with the big changes that are going to be happening over a very short interval of time. And again, as Joe mentioned, then that sets the stage for what comes our way for later on this upcoming week.
Right. I know, Philip Neary, you were asking about, is it a Miller A or Miller B or a hybrid? I mean, look, this is a Miller A from what you know, from what I remember. I'm not, sure why that matters, but it's a Miller A. It would be a low that generally moves across the Gulf states up the eastern seaboard and just deepens as one feature. It doesn't redevelop. It's not like a low coming from the Ohio Valley and then center jumps or redevelops off the Virginia coast and then moves up northeastward. That's a Miller B type where you've got. Uh, so this looks to me like a Miller A. Is that am I right here?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And you know what I
I
always
just
say?
I
Miller,
don't think about those type of labels, so it's not something that I ever concern myself with.
Miller makes it right.
Yes, uh,
Tom
exactly.
Contino, Tom Contino asked me about do I ever look at the lifted index? Yeah, I do. I'd like to see a lift for a thunderstorm. I'd like to see a lifted index of 0 or less. I use the FOOS, the NAM FOOS. Now, tomorrow the lift index gets down to 0.1, which is like on the verge of maybe a thunderstorm at LaGuardia. So it's possible that we might see that. I also, Joe, I'm looking at the boundary level winds, and I usually, for wind gusts, I like to go like 1.5 over that. And tomorrow at 7 p.m., the boundary level wind at LaGuardia is 31, which would translate into 45. So I would say that we're probably going to be seeing later tomorrow and into tomorrow night at least 45 to 50 mile per hour winds in gusts, not sustained, thank God, but in gusts with the frontal patches. It shows up very clearly on the FOOS. The winds tomorrow morning are northeast, east northeast. By midday tomorrow, they are coming from a south southeast direction, and then boom, by later tomorrow, they go immediately into the west, and then they roar from the west from later tomorrow, tomorrow night, and on through much of the day on Monday.
By the way, the I'm just looking here. This thing does play out. This storm does play out like the Icon and the European have. We're going to be snowing probably with temperatures close to 20 through all of this. There's going to be a lot of cold air that's going to be drawn in and mixed down to the surface. So this is going to be a high ratio. This is 15 to 1 type storm, I think.
So the puff factor will come into play.
Yeah, I don't think this is not going to be a 32 wet snow type of scenario. This is going to
No,
be
no.
this is going to be down in like low 20s. Salt doesn't work type of snow event.
Low density, puffy, powdery, easily blown around. Yeah.
Right. So who knows?
So here's a question. I shouldn't even throw this question out this early or whatever like that, but you think that before this is all over, said and done, some weather office is going to throw out a blizzard warning or
Oh, the B word? Well, yeah, they don't do blizzard watches anymore. Okay. They learned that lesson back, I forgot what it was, eh, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where they put up a blizzard watch and then they had to take it down or something like that, and it just caused all kinds of confusion. And anyway, they don't do the blizzard watch. I look, let's get to Monday. I think we can make that speculation probably better on Monday before we can, instead of doing that right now. Because I still, there's always that chance that it doesn't quite play out exactly the way the models are, indicating. But I do think it is remarkable that the European is just kind of locked onto this about 3 days ago. It has not varied. A little west here, a little east there, yes, but it's not varied on the idea of a major storm. Now it's just a question of where do we thread the track and how this all plays out. But it's going to be be a fascinating next few days as we try to piece all this together. Got some super chat hits, Joe, from Richie Comenzo. New name to the channel. Thank you very much, Robert Lobnicki. And let's see. I think David Fuller. Did you give another hit? I think you did. David Fuller again. Oh no, no, it's the same one. Okay, so Chris N, Arthur Gillis, Richie Comenzo, Robert Lomnicki, David Fuller, all hitting the tip jar today, and it is always appreciated. Thank you so much for doing that. And I think at this point we've kind of covered it all. Seeing a troll on the chat board, Joe.
Two things I want to just bring up here. First, of the long range discussion from WPC. In case any of you are wondering, these are the folks who draw the long range maps out through seven
Oh,
days.
good.
And
I'll bring it up while you read it. I'll bring up the long range map because I did set it up. Hold on a second. This is
okay,
WPC's. And let me just quickly refresh it in case they updated it because what's the time on that discussion?
2:10 a.m.
Oh, so it's the old one. Usually around this time they send out the updated forecast. No, it's still the old one. Okay, let me get the map set. There's actually two maps, but so I'll switch to this one. It starts as Wednesday into Thursday. So go ahead, read away.
Okay, well, they're saying that downstream, an impactful winter coastal storm offers a threat for heavy snow from the mid Atlantic through New England Wednesday and Thursday, as depicted the linked WPC Winter Weather Outlook, WWO, with abundant sub freezing temperatures in place ahead of this storm system. Widespread snow is expected, with a corridor of mixed precipitation further to the south. Guidance, however, continues to adjust the inland extent of the bulk of the precipitation. This is from Stichtel. That's the forecaster there, who I've seen his name on these discussions for a good number of years. So what they're and this is what we just talked about. The how far inland is the heavy precipitation? How far inland will the extent of the bulk of the precipitation, which probably will be snow, will go? But they are talking about right now on a Saturday, early Saturday, a threat for heavy snow, abundant subfreezing temperatures in place ahead of it, widespread snow, a corridor of mixed precipitation, but far to the south. And we shall see what the story is regarding all of that. Take a look. You can see Joe on the map that Joe is showing on your screen right now. The dark shade of green. That is what, Joe? 30 to 50%,
Yes, that's 30 to 50% for Thursday into Friday.
which I think is a good probability range to go for 3 4 days in advance.
Oh yeah, I agree. And the other one I showed both of them because what's the wrong one here? So
Now,
this was Wednesday into Thursday. And so 12Z. So you can see they had a 50 to 70% chance across much of Virginia into West Virginia, and the 30 to 50 up into central New Jersey, the 30 to 10. And this is because of the timing, because the time in terms of the time of day that snow arrives. You got 10 to 30 up to eastern Massachusetts, and then Thursday through Friday, you've got this larger area of 30 to 50. Yeah, I think at this stage of the game, this makes perfect sense. And yeah, you can see they pushed that 30 to 50 line pretty far north into upstate New York, southern Vermont, New Hampshire. This is the probability for at least. It says quarter of an inch of liquid equivalent of snow and sleet, but for our purposes, let's just say it's the probability for at least 3 inches of accumulating snow.
and there you go.
And speaking of going, I think it's time for us to go. So,
I'm holding something up in front of the camera here.
yeah,
Can you see what I'm holding?
yes, les Almanac de les Femmes.
Yes, I'm holding the Farmer's Almanac for 2025. May I quote the Farmer's Almanac?
Oh, by
This is
all means, Joe, quote the Farmer's Almanac. Knock yourself out.
okay. You ready for this, ladies and gentlemen? If you have a copy of this, you can probably, verify that what I'm reading. I'm reading exactly what they say here. 20 to 23. That's what, February 20th is Thursday through 23 Sunday. So in that 3 day interval, 20 to 23, it says storm tracks from central Gulf to mid Atlantic coast. Moderate to heavy snowfall, Maryland, Delaware, most of New Jersey, southern New York, southern New England, light amounts further north. Moderate to heavy snowfall, February 20 to 23, according to the Farmer's Almanac. Say what you will about the Farmer's Almanac. Every once in a while, whether it's an example of the broken clock is
That's
right
right,
twice
twice a
a day.
day. Yes.
But I mean, like, it's not just what I would say here is that it's not just the fact that they're saying, "Oh, chance of snow," or chance of heavy snow. They actually are saying storm from the Gulf, which is where this storm is going to emanate from, up to the Mid Atlantic area. And so they are saying, now I don't know whether or not that jinxes everything for all of you snow lovers, or whether or not you say, "Wow," but I'm just pointing out that that's what the Farmer's Almanac has forecast or predicted for later this week.
All right. Okay. It's time to go, and we will be back. We'll be here tomorrow night at 7:35. So we're not taking Sunday off. We'll be here tomorrow night at 7:35, and of course we'll be on. Probably we're going to be on all week, God willing, right through whatever happens for next Wednesday night and Thursday. I want to give a special hello to a special troll that's on the chat board. I won't say who the special troll is, but he and I are very close. So we'll we'll see you guys. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you all, those of you who hit the tip jar today, and those of you who shop our Amazon link. Thank you very much. So we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.
And thank you for the 179 likes today.
Ta ta.
Ta ta.